So is it happening? It is. Grinnell, back in 1900, did some beautiful, beautiful research in transects looking at different species, and he found that the pika in the Sierras had only gone up by about 7,800 feet. Now they've censused it, and it's gone up quite a bit more. So we do see species are adjusting. Okay, the other thing that species are doing is they're coming back earlier in the spring and they're leaving later in the fall. Some are actually leaving earlier in the fall too, but that's another story. But this is a slide that shows on the x-axis we have years, on the y-axis is showing the date of first arrival. So this is when the woman who is taking these data in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan saw a sandhill crane on the very first time per year, and she recorded it, and these are the data that we ended up having. And so it shows very strikingly that species are indeed being affected by that. Are all of them? No. There still are some, that, especially birds, that are being triggered for migration as far as day length. Day length isn't changing, so they're not changing when they're coming back. Some of them that are being affected by temperature, they are coming back earlier. Again, now what we have is this different timing of everything, and we're going to have this tearing apart of how all of these fit together. So this is a study that we did with 161 studies and about 180 plus species. It actually was a lot more than 180 plus. See the X on the O? What's on the x-axis is the number of days changed per year. And if the number of days is 0, there was no change. I didn't want to put that information in there because I really am not concerned about what's not changing. What I want to know is, of the species that are changing, how much are they actually changing? And the arrow on the top now is showing that it's about 5 days per decade during this period, and this period was about 30 to 45 years. That's a huge, huge change that's going on, and we've got to understand how to grapple with that too. Okay, so there are species that are adapting. It's not happening so fast that they can't adapt, but there are some species that really can't adapt. And what are we going to do with those? Well, the thing that I'm concerned about the most is extinction, because if these species, when they're trying to move, what happens if they don't have any accessible habitat? And a good example of this actually would be the pika, the one that I showed you earlier. If it's moving up in elevation, it's very, very sensitive to heat. It's moving up in elevation. Well, it's moved from, say, here to here. There's still more room for it to move up, but there's no habitat up there. It has to live in the big boulders. So it can't go up. It's stuck. So now, what are we going to do? We have to either go in and pick them all up and move them someplace else. Or I was giving this talk one time to a bunch of students, and some guy in the back of the room raised his hand. I said, yes, yes, yes. He goes, why don't we just helicopter in great big boulders? I guess that's thinking outside of the box. But the point is that there really isn't any place for them to go. So here what we have are these species that don't have any place to go. We're calling them functionally extinct. What that basically means is they don't have any accessible habitat unless we go in and move them. That's a pretty daunting thought, in my opinion. How do we actually go in and move them? That's a tough one. So what we can do then is go to managed relocation. That's the new phrase for assisted migration. So managed relocation, everything always changes. Managed relocation is more of a, they assume is much more of an appropriate term. So what about assisted migration or managed relocation? Can we do it? Yeah, I think we can do some, but I'm not sure how much we can do. Here's an example. I grew up in New Mexico, and they have things called sky islands, and they're kind of like, there's the desert here, and out come these big, huge outcroppings, and the top is flat, so it looks pretty much just like this. There's a bazillion species that occur in these areas, and where are they going to go? Here you have these species up on this flat area and it's warming. Where are they going to go? There's really no way they're going to go, oh, I know there's a higher mountain over there, so I'll come down here, run across here, and go back up. So unless we go in and we move them, it really is, it's going to be tough. Here's an example. This is the Sky Islands. This is just showing you already how many threatened, endangered, and sensitive species. And this is all for the Southwestern National Forest. All the different colors mean different national forests. The gray is the Sky Islands. So we already have a lot of species that are in trouble there. Are they going to make it? I truly believe the only way that they're going to make it is if we go in and we actually move them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that, about managed relocations. Can we do it? I was talking to Mike Scott before this, and he was saying, you know, in the 30s, people went out to all these different countries and grabbed all these species like the chukar and the gray partridge and things and brought them back and introduced them so that we could have something to shoot. It worked beautifully, but those were pretty gregarious species. When we're talking about the canyon, I can never remember its name. It's something canyon mouse on the top of one of these Sky Islands. I don't think it's that gregarious. I think if we're going to move it, we're going to have to somehow figure out, first, we need to catch it. We need to figure out what all of its habitat is needed so that we make sure we take it with us. We put it in our U-Haul trailer. We move it, I don't know where. Let's move it. We move it someplace so that the next, as it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, we don't have to continue to move it, but we can't put it so far up that it's too cold. We introduce it. We watch it. We help make sure that it gets established, and then it becomes an invasive species. Okay, this is an exaggeration, but what I'm getting at is that we're losing species, and I honestly don't think that there's much that we can do about a lot of them. There's a lot that we can do about some of them, and we need to be doing that. And I think what we need to be doing is thinking outside of the box about how we can do this. I testified in front of Barbara Boxer's committee, and she was asking me, what do you think we need to do? And maybe we have all of our refuges, and we have to keep our refuges. They are precious. But maybe as the species need to be moving, maybe we need to start having rolling easements. I don't know. I don't know what you would call it. And then we watch the species as they go along. But what that's going to take is a whole change in paradigm in saying when somebody has an endangered species or any species that's not normally there in their backyard, they are proud and they walk around and they strut and they say, I have a blah, blah, blah in my backyard. We really have got to get that change going. So then we come back to managed relocations. First, can we? The next question is, should we? Because what are we, how do we pick which ones we're going to move? How do we know which ones we're going to move? And how do we know where we put them, they're not going to become invasives? So that's really a concern. So if they have no accessible habitat and they're functionally extinct, they can either go into the managed relocation program or become extinct. And I know this sounds like doom and gloom, and I have had people tell me, Terry, don't say such horrible things. And then I have other people tell me, well, if you don't say it, nobody's going to know it. So I've decided I do need to start saying that this is really where we are. We do indeed have a problem that we are going to lose a lot of species. And what I feel we need to start doing is trying to figure out which ones can we save and working hard on those, and which ones we can't save, and we've got to let them go. And I've been told time and time again not to use this word, but that is triage. We've got to somehow figure out what we can put our money on and really help them and make them survive. But the species on the Sky Islands, they're wonderful species, but we don't have the money, the knowledge, the people, anything to actually do all of that, which I'm very, very concerned about.